What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. The 2021 to 2022 standard format of the Pokemon trading card game begins on September 10th, 2021 with the standard format rotation. This standard format will be Sword and Shield base set and on, also referred to as Regulation Mark D and on. So on the bottom of the screen here, you'll see those regulation marks on the bottom left corner of Pokemon TCG cards, regulation marks D, E, and in the near future, we will see cards with regulation mark F. Everything with D and a letter later in the alphabet will be legal for the next year of Pokemon TCG's standard format. If you'd like more explanation on the formats of the Pokemon trading card game, I will leave a link for that in the description down below. In today's video, we will look at 25 standard deck archetypes and explain them briefly and look at example lists for the Sword and Shield on standard format. So the goal of this video is to acquaint the viewer with many popular and viable Pokemon TCG decks for the beginning of the 2021 to 2022 standard format. Now, I do specify it's for the beginning of the format because as new sets come out every 3 months or so, decks will adjust and new decks will be created. Before we get into the bulk of the video, shout out to my sponsors PotownStore.com and Pokemoncardio. You can find links for both of these sites in the description down below. To buy ptcgo codes, you can head on over to PotownStore.com and use code Celio for 5% off. It is the best online place to buy ptcgo codes, and they have instant automatic email delivery of your codes directly to your email once you buy them. From there, you can paste them into ptcgo and claim those packs. And then you can go over to ptcgozone.com/ptcgo prices to see how many packs you need to trade for the cards you want for your deck. From there, you have your packs in ptcgo, you know the card you're looking for and the price you're looking to pay for it. Then you go over onto the ptcgo public trades, turn acceptable trades only on, search for the card you want, and look for the packs you're willing to pay for it. Accept that trade, and you'll be on your way to building the decks you want. Now, if you need some deck lists to base it off of course, we're going to look at a ton of deck lists in this video, but you can find my ever-updating list of standard format decks over on Pokemoncardio, and the link to my profile on Pokemoncardio will be in the description down below. I have selected 25 deck archetypes, which I believe will be competitively viable for the beginning of the 2021 through 2022 standard format of the Pokemon TCG. Now, if a deck archetype is not listed in this video, that does not mean you shouldn't play it. I just want to make that abundantly clear. There are plenty of other decks. There are decks that we haven't seen yet, decks that have not been thought up yet or brought into viability. The standard format at the time of recording this video technically hasn't even started yet for the 2021 through 22 standard format. So there are plenty of discoveries to be made and new creations to be made. This is to give you base lists and places to start. I will put the archetypes into 3 tiers, and these tiers are pretty estimated. It's just in tier A, we've got decks that I think have the most promise. Tier B, a little less promise. Tier C, a little less promise. But like I said, we're looking at 25 decks today. I think these all can be taken into tournaments and perform, get wins, maybe place high, maybe even win the tournament. There's a lot of variety right now, and the format's kind of wide open. So pick a deck you like, learn it, play well, get a little lucky, and you can win a tournament with any of these decks, I believe. There are more decks, like I said, that aren't here on my list of decks that we'll look at today. Most VMAX Pokemon can be built into some sort of functional deck. So if there's a card you like that I don't talk about today, don't let me stop you from having fun and trying to create a cool deck. Just a brief little deck building guide on roughly how VMAX decks are being built right now. Now, of course, you can build decks that are not VMAX or V based. We'll talk about a couple today, like Decidueye and Regidrago. But roughly, to build a pretty typical VMAX deck in the Sword and Shield to Revolving Skies format, you'll pick a VMAX you like, a backup attacker to go with it, and then some support Pokemon. And you'll see instances of all of this in the video today as we go through all of these archetypes. Let's start out with Eternatus VMAX. So Eternatus VMAX Has 340 HP. It is a dark type VMAX Pokemon, and its ability allows you to have 8 Pokemon on your bench instead of 5 if all of your Pokemon in play are dark type. Dread End does 30 damage times the amount of all of your dark type Pokemon in play. You'll typically see Eternatus VMAX in this format, supported with Galarian Moltres V, Umbreon VMAX, Crobat V, and Galarian Zigzagoon. Here's my sample list for Eternatus VMAX. You'll see all those cards I just mentioned featured here in this list. We have a couple of energy switch, so we can switch cards from our Galarian Moltres V after it accelerates that energy with Dire Flame Wings on over to Eternatus VMAX. So if we miss an energy attachment, or the energy gets removed, or the Eternatus gets knocked out, we can quickly power it up in a pinch with the help of Moltres V plus Energy Switch. Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX is a Water-type VMAX with 320 HP, and it has 2 attacks. Ride of the High King is a pretty conservative attack that does 10 damage plus 30 more for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon, maxing out at 160, unless of course you're playing against Eternatus. In that case, it'll do 250. Max Lance for 2 water energy does 10 damage, plus you may discard up to 2 energy from this Pokemon. If you do, this attack does 120 more damage for each card you discarded in this way, doing a maximum of 250. Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX is typically built with Inteleon with Shady Dealings to search out trainer cards, along with Drizzile with Shady Dealings, and Inteleon Rapid Strike to do some extra damage, Melanie to accelerate water energy, and Suicune V as a good basic attacker. Here you'll see a fairly straightforward list of mine, where I'm not using the Chilling Rain Inteleon to add extra damage because I'm comfortable just two-shotting everything with Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX and Suicune V. But of course, there's a lot of creativity to be had, especially with these Inteleon engine decks, adding in some of the other Inteleon, adding in Medicham V, adding in other attackers, other one-off trainers that you can search out with Shady Dealings. So there's a lot to be done with Ice Rider Calyrex. I have a bit more of a straightforward list here. Next is Leafeon VMAX, and Leafeon V is a favorite of mine. Leafeon VMAX has 310 HP and is a grass-type VMAX Pokemon. Grass Knot for grass and colorless does 60 damage times the amount of energy in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. With the average retreat cost of VMAX and V Pokemon that are popularly played in the metagame, Grass Knot will be doing a base of 120 damage if the average retreat cost is 2. With Galar Mine, which adds 2 to every Pokemon's retreat cost, Grass Knot will in theory be doing an average of 240 damage, which is really good for just 2 energy. Leafeon VMAX also has the Max Leaf attack for Grass colorless to do 170 damage and heal 30 damage from this Pokemon. So Max Leaf is not going to be your main attack, but if you have to use it, it's a fine attack. Leafeon VMAX is so good because Leafeon V has an ability that allows you to search your deck for a grass energy and attach it to one of your Pokemon and then end your turn. So you can just get both of your energy attachments on the first turn thanks to Leafeon V. Here is my sample deck list for Leafeon VMAX, using that Inteleon line, which you'll see a lot because the Drizzile is just so good to get out trainers, and then Inteleon gets out 2 trainers when you evolve it, and the Inteleon Quick Shooting adds some extra damage around the board. So you did see I omitted it in the Ice Rider list, but I do have that Inteleon Quick Shooting here in the Leafeon VMAX list because sometimes it will help you reach those one-hit knockouts that you can get with Grass Knot on 3 retreat cost Pokemon, which Galar Mine turns into a 5 retreat cost Pokemon. Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX is being revered as possibly the strongest deck in the post-rotation standard format that we know of right now. Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX is a 330 HP fighting type VMAX Pokemon, which has the Rapid Strike emblem, which means it does have special cards available for its use, like Rapid Strike Energy. Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX has 2 attacks, Gale Thrust having a max damage of 150 for 1 fighting energy, and G-Max Rapid Flow, which for 3 energy and discarding all energy, can do 120 to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon at the same time. Now, doing 120 damage to 2 different Pokemon sounds good, but when you add in Telescopic Sight, which can make it do an extra 30 to each V Pokemon, and then also Rapid Strike Passimian, which adds another 30 to V Pokemon on the bench that you're damaging, Gmax Rapid Flow can do 180 to 2 different Pokemon at the same time. Combine that with Inteleon Rapid Strike's quick shooting ability, which adds 2 damage counters to a Pokemon once a turn, and also Medicham V's Yoga Loop, which for 2 energy does 2 damage counters, but if it knocks something out with those 2 damage counters, you take an extra turn. Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX has an arsenal of incredible tools at its disposal. Here's my Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX sample list, and of course, like I mentioned earlier, just as a reminder, you can find all of these lists and export them directly to ptcgo over at my Pokemoncardio profile, which is in the description down below. Rayquaza VMAX is a brand new card from Evolving Skies. It is a Dragon type VMAX Pokemon, also with that Rapid Strike emblem, just like Rapid Strike Urshifu has. It has the ability as your Pulse. Once during your turn, you may discard your hand and draw 3 cards. This is very powerful because it does not say you can only use one of these abilities a turn. So if you have 2 Rayquazas, you can use 2 as your Pulses. If you have 3 Rayquazas, you can use 3, and so on. It has 1 attack, but it is a very strong attack. Max burst for fire and lightning, does 20 damage, and you may discard any amount of basic fire energy or amount of basic lightning energy from this Pokemon. This attack does 80 more damage for each card you discarded in this way. So you'll commonly be dealing like 340 damage with this max burst, since Flaffy and Rose helps you accelerate energy to Rayquaza VMAX. Here's my sample list for Rayquaza VMAX, and I'm keeping it quite simple, just trying to get Rayquaza VMAX consistent and powerful and doing its thing. Do note that Rayquaza VMAX is pretty weak to Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX because Rapid Strike can snipe off your Flaffies, and without those Flaffies, you're not getting as much energy onto the board as you would like. Next, we have another heavy hitter of the post-rotation format, Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX is going to be commonly combined with the power of Alchemy VMAX. Both of these Pokemon love getting a ton of energy onto the board, and Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX helps you do that while also drawing cards with the ability Underworld Door. Here's my example list for Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX combined with a 2/2 line of Alchemy VMAX. These psychic Pokemon notably have different weaknesses, so against dark decks you can use Alchemy, and against metal decks you can just keep Alchemy in the deck or in the discard pile and just hit away with Max Geist on Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. Next we have Suicune V, which as an archetype is not very specified right now. There are a lot of ways to build Suicune V, a lot of partners that can go with it, and a lot of decks that Suicune V as a card can be just tossed on into. Suicune V, I think, really lends itself to a toolbox style archetype or deck, which means you combine a whole bunch of different things in there and play the deck differently based on the deck you're playing against. Suicune V, with its ability Fleet-Footed, pairs very well with Altaria, since Altaria can put any supporter card from your deck on top of your deck, and then Fleetfoot, if active, draws you a card. So this combination of Altaria and Suicune V can essentially let you be playing whatever supporter you want every turn. Here is my example list for Suicune V, and if anything, I just want this to inspire you to try out some off-the-road kind of ideas. This list might look like a little much, and that's probably because it is, but I do have a lot of ideas going on in here, and a cohesive idea that forms them all together, that Suicune V can get you the supporter you need with the help of Altaria, and you can accelerate water energy with Melanie, or water or fire energy with the supporter Raihan. Next we have Umbreon VMAX as an archetype, and this is going to also encompass Single Strike Urshifu VMAX, because I do believe Single Strike Urshifu VMAX best spot is just included into an Umbreon VMAX focused deck. Umbreon VMAX is very strong because upon evolving Umbreon VMAX, you can bring up one of your opponent's benched Pokemon into the active spot and then smack it with Max Darkness or even with Single Strike Urshifu VMAX. So I do think this Single Strike box style deck is finally coming together and could be quite an aggressive force in the standard format. Like I said, I think that Single Strike Urshifu is just best as an inclusion in an Umbreon focused deck. And I do think that my example list here shows that very well. We just have 2 Urshifu V and 1 Urshifu VMAX, while we have a full 4-4 count of Umbreon V and Umbreon VMAX. We're going to be trying to be very offensive and gust up our opponent's benched Pokemon and take whatever knockouts we can with Umbreon VMAX, Urshifu V, or Urshifu VMAX, and of course the help of Houndoom to accelerate those single strike energies. Next, we have Victini VMAX, a fire type Pokemon VMAX with 310 HP. Its main attack here is going to be Max Victory, which does 220 damage to Pokemon V and VMAX, which is quite good. That means you're knocking out most basic V Pokemon. It can be combined with Umbreon VMAX to bring up weaker Pokemon from the bench to the active, typically high counts of bosses' orders, and it can be paired with Galarian Moltres to then energy switch that dark energy for Moltres over on to Victini VMAX. Here's my sample list that I've been working on with Aurora Energy, which can be used for either Victini V, Moltres V, Victini VMAX, or even Galarian Zapdos V, which I have teched into this deck for fighting weak Pokemon. Next is Zacian V, and like Suicune V, this deck doesn't really have an exact way it must be built. It doesn't have a specified list or a general idea that, oh, this is definitely what is in the Zacian V deck. There are a lot of Zacian V with Inteleon decks being built, but there are also some decks that don't really have a support Pokemon, and they're just Zacian V and Zamazenta V, and it's just the 2 dogs doing their thing. Zacian V is a very strong Pokemon, and it can be seen as a support Pokemon of its own, since it does essentially draw you cards and accelerate energy to itself. Of course, if there are energy on the top 3 cards of your deck. Ember Blade does a lot of damage for 3 energy on a basic Pokemon. So Zacian V is kind of the whole package with a good bit of support surrounding it. This is my current list for Zacian V Inteleon. I think it's one of the most smooth running decks in the format, just because your basic Pokemon, your attacker is a basic Pokemon. It doesn't have to evolve, and it draws cards, and it accelerates energies to itself, and it does a lot of damage. Zamazenta V shares an energy typing with it and blocks off damage from VMAX Pokemon, and then you have the Drizzile Inteleon line to search out whatever trainers you need throughout the game. Next, we have Decidueye, our first single prize or non-V focused deck archetype that we're going to talk about here. Decidueye is a stage 2 Pokemon with the ability Deep Forest Camo. Prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon V and GX. And when something says Pokemon V, that also means VMAX. So you will not be taking any direct damage on your Decidueyes from Pokemon V and VMAX unless your opponent has something that gets around it, like an attack that says it goes through effects, or a supporter like Phoebe that says your opponent's VMAX attacks are not affected by your Pokemon's effects. Decidueye has 1 attack, Splitting Arrow. It does 90 and then 20 to 2 of your opponent's benched Pokemon, which is fine when your opponent can't hit you at all and you're just chipping away at them. It's commonly supported by the Inteleon line, as you'll see in a lot of decks, because this line of Pokemon just really helps your deck run the way you want it to, and the new Chilling Reign Inteleon allows you to do a little extra damage along the way. Big Parasol is important in this deck because it prevents effects of attacks, with which Deep Forest Camo does not prevent. Here's my sample list for Decidueye. It hasn't changed too much with the rotation. We now have Raihan in the deck, where the old supporter card Rosa used to be. Next is Dhelmise VMAX. I think Dhelmise VMAX is such an awesome looking card, and grass Pokemon have a lot of strength in them in this format, in my opinion. Dhelmise VMAX is a monster of a Pokemon at 330 HP, being a grass type VMAX Pokemon with 2 attacks. The first one, Swinging Chain, for a grass energy, does 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for each grass energy attached to this Pokemon. So that can be done to the active or the bench. And then Max Anchor for grass colorless does 240 damage. During your next turn, this Pokemon can't use Max Anchor, but of course you could switch out and switch back, or just use Swinging Chain. Rillaboom accelerates energy, as does Leafeon V. Zacian V gives you the option of healing your Pokemon and accelerating energy, and Turffield Stadium helps you search out your evolution grass-type Pokemon. We have Dhelmise VMAX being supported by the Leafeon V and Rillaboom, like I mentioned, that both accelerate energy, Kricketune V and Crobat V to draw cards, and the nice inclusion of Peony, which discards your whole hand to get 2 trainer cards, but with Kricketune V in play to draw your hand back up to 3, you don't typically mind playing Peony. Next is Dragapult VMAX, which World Champion of 2019 Henry Brand recently won a post-rotation format tournament of 400 people online on ptcgo with Dragapult VMAX, and we'll be showing his deck list here today. Dragapult VMAX is a psychic type Pokemon that's resistant to fighting, and this is important because Urshifu VMAX does not want to face down Dragapult VMAX, and that's something that makes this card so powerful and an archetype built around it able to succeed. So here is Henry Brand's Dragapult VMAX Inteleon list from just a couple days prior to this video. I think this list is pretty close to perfect for the Sword and Shield Evolving Skies format for what this list wants to do. Dragapult VMAX does some damage to the active, spreads damage around to the bench, and is a very tactical card. So if you want a deck that's a challenge to play but absolutely able to succeed, Dragapult VMAX might just be the deck for you. Next we have Duraludon VMAX, the other dragon Pokemon VMAX from Evolving Skies. This time we have a single strike emblem on the card, which means that it can be buffed by single strike energy. But I do think most Duraludon VMAX decks will choose not to go into that single strike focus and rather just focus on being an attacker that uses metal energy. The ability Skyscraper prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon that have special energy attached is great because Rapid Strike Urshifu, the deck I mentioned might just be the best deck in the format as of now, utilizes 4 Rapid Strike energy as half of the energy in the deck list most of the time. So Skyscraper is very good to block out attacks from Rapid Strike Urshifu. The G-Max Pulverization attack does 220 damage, and it goes through all effects. So something like Zamazenta V or Decidueye, which we looked at earlier, will still be hit by this G-Max Pulverization. The Duraludon VMAX does have a lot going for it. Here is my current list for Duraludon VMAX. It is kind of a metal box-ish type of deck. We do just have the 2/2 Duraludon VMAX in the deck, but that is mostly because I don't expect Duraludon VMAX to be getting knocked out if we can set it up, because we can move the energy off of it with Bronzonk's Metal Transfer, fully heal the Duraludon VMAX with Cheryl, and then put the damage back on. We'll only need to attack a few times with G-Max Pulverization before clearing our opponent's board of Pokemon, and if the opponent ever comes close to fully knocking out Duraludon VMAX, we can use Single Strike Scroll of Scorn with the Furious Anger attack, which is added to the Pokemon it's attached to do 10 damage plus 10 more for each damage counter on the Pokemon it's attached to. So if someone were to do 300 damage to Duraludon VMAX, it would swing back 310 damage with the Single Strike Scroll of Scorn. Next, we have Glaceon VMAX. Glaceon VMAX is another one of these Pokemon that prevent damage done by a certain kind of Pokemon. Crystal Veil reads prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon VMAX, except any Glaceon VMAX, so the mirror matches don't have to worry about Crystal Veil. So this will make your opponent have to awkwardly attack with their suboptimal V attackers in a deck that's completely focused around VMAX Pokemon. It has one attack, which is Max Icicle, it does 150 damage and then 30 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. We'll probably see Glaceon VMAX commonly supported by the Inteleon line, Suicune, and Melanie, since they all work so well with Glaceon VMAX. Next is Inteleon VMAX, and this list is actually going to look pretty similar to Glaceon VMAX because the water-type Pokemon have such a strong supporter in Melanie, and also both of these VMAXs do damage to the bench, so they both also benefit from Telescopic Sight. You may see some Inteleon VMAX lists steer more into the disruption ability of Inteleon VMAX due to Hydro Snipe, which does 60 and then puts an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon into their hand. Here's my sample list for Inteleon VMAX. And what's nice about this is you can get a lot of the cards for this deck from the Inteleon VMAX League Battle deck. Next, we have Jolteon VMAX, another Pokemon being supported by the Inteleon line. And I would like to talk about that just a slight bit at this point in the video, that it might be annoying to see a lot of this Drizzile and Inteleon being used. But I personally think it is very fun to play with these cards because they allow you to let your deck function as you want it to and search out options and make mindful decisions throughout the game, while also having a little bit of diversity with these stage 2 Pokemon that were kind of not around in the game for a little while there. So I think it's nice that we do have evolutions being a big part of the game right now. And while it can be a little annoying to see the same support Pokemon used every game, I think the Inteleon and Drizzile cards that we are seeing a lot of give for fun and interactive gameplay. And that's what we're looking at with Jolteon VMAX. It has the Max Thunder Rumble attack, doing 100 damage to the active and 100 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. So we're going to want to make sure we get something damaged on the bench with either Inteleon or a Jolteon attack or Galarian Zigzagoon, so we can do 100 and 100. Using the elemental badge to make Max Thunder Rumble only cost a single lightning energy to use, we can chain Cheryl's to heal Jolteon VMAX and then just reattach one energy to it and continuously do 100 and 100 to the opponent's board for just one energy. Here's my sample list for Jolteon VMAX and Inteleon. Keeping it simple with that training court and energy search, trying to always guarantee we have energy, and speed lightning energy giving us a little bit of an extra power to draw. Next, we have Rapid Strike Malamar, another non-V or VMAX focused deck. Malamar has the Rapid Strike Tentacles attack. For one basic psychic or one spiral energy in the deck list we'll be looking at, it does 40 damage times. Reveal any number of Rapid Strike cards from your hand. This attack does 40 damage for each card you revealed in this way, and then shuffle those cards into your deck. So we're going to be playing a lot of Rapid Strike cards in this deck and a lot of ways to get Rapid Strike cards. So some quick math: if you shuffle 6 cards that are Rapid Strike from your hand into your deck, you'll do 240, knocking out just about every V Pokemon out there. And if you shuffle 8 into your deck, you'll be doing 320, knocking out almost every VMAX Pokemon out there with just this little Malamar. Here is the list, and this is heavily influenced by a list recently played by Azul GG. Next, we have Sylveon VMAX. Sylveon VMAX decks might not all look the same. In fact, I hope they don't, because Sylveon VMAX is a card that can really be diverse from deck to deck. Since Max Harmony, its main attack, has 3 colorless energy as the energy requirement. Max Harmony does 70 plus 30 more damage for each different type of Pokemon on your bench, so that really incentivizes you to have many different types of Pokemon in your deck. It is Rapid Strike, so it can use Rapid Strike Energy and Octillery, and the Ribbon Badge tool, specifically for Sylveon, makes it worth 1 less prize, so you can actually force your opponent to knock out 3 Sylveon VMAX to win the game, which other VMAX Pokemon cannot do. Here is my Sylveon VMAX list at the moment, utilizing Galarian Moltres V and Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX as partners for the Sylveon VMAX. In a more Sylveon VMAX focused deck, I believe you would play multiple of the Ribbon Badge, but in here, since this is more of a box style deck with multiple attackers. I'm not using the ribbon badge at the moment. Next, we have Zamazenta V. This may seem monotonous since we already looked at Zacian V, but I believe a Zamazenta V deck will be built differently than a Zacian V deck. Let's take a look. In this Zamazenta V list, we really lack extra Pokemon. We want to wall out our opponent's decks that are built all around VMAX Pokemon with that Dauntless Shield ability. And then there's suboptimal attackers that do chip away at Zamazenta V. We want to heal that damage with Crystal Cave, Moo Moo Cheese, Team Yell Towel, and Pokemon Center Lady. In addition to all of this healing, we have the Rusted Shield that gives Zamazenta V plus 70 HP. I do think you'll see some off-the-wall cards in this deck. Moo Moo Cheese and Team Yell Towel aren't really talked about much in the competitive scene, but I actually think their healing is quite powerful when paired with Zamazenta V. Next, we have Blaziken VMAX, another Pokemon that really lends itself to diverse and creative decks. The Max Blaze attack for 2 colorless energy does 130, and you choose up to 2 of your benched Rapid Strike Pokemon and attach an energy card from your discard pile to each of them. So this can be paired with Urshifu, with Zeraora V, with Sylveon VMAX, maybe even with all 3 of them. The list I have today pairs it specifically with Zeraora V to use its attack to do 100 to the active and 160 to a benched Pokemon as long as a Rapid Strike Pokemon of yours attacked last turn, which can be a total of 220 damage to the bench thanks to Passimian's Throwing Coach and a Telescopic Sight tool attached to the Zeraora V. Next is Corviknight VMAX, a Metal-type VMAX Pokemon with an ability Lustrous Body that prevents all effects of your opponent's abilities done to it, so things like Quick Shooting from Inteleon will not affect Corviknight VMAX. It has Free Retreat. It's resistant to Grass, which is pretty nice because Leafeon VMAX is quite a strong attacker, and that will be doing 0 damage with the first attack since Corviknight VMAX has no retreat cost, and the Gmax Hurricane attack does 240 damage for 3 energy. We're going to be making a deck that looks very similar to the Duraludon VMAX for Corviknight. It uses Bronzong to move the energy around and Cheryl to heal the Corviknight VMAX. Next, we have Regidrago, a Dragon Basic non-V, non-VMAX Pokemon that does a whopping 240 damage for Grass, Fire. Cherim is going to accelerate Grass energy to it, and Eldegoss is going to search out said energy. Tropius is a solid backup attacker to clean up a Pokemon that Regidrago did 242. So you'll be 2-shotting VMAXs and 1-shotting Vs with this very powerful single prize focused deck. This list, again, like a previous one, was heavily influenced by Azul GG, so shout out to him. Here we have Sableye V. Sableye V is a dark basic Pokemon V, and the attack we'll focus on here is Crazy Claws. For Dark, it does 10 damage plus 60 more damage for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. So if your opponent has 5 damage counters on it, Crazy Claws will do 310 damage, which is a lot. Noivern V for a Psychic Energy spreads 20 damage to every one of your opponent's Pokemon. Galarian Zigzagoon can put 1 damage counter wherever you like, and Inteleon from Chilling Reign can put 2 damage counters once a turn wherever you like. So we're playing Aurora Energy for the Noivern V, and that also puts some Dark or maybe even Psychic Energy into the discard pile, which when a Pokemon gets knocked out, we can then accelerate with our Raihan supporter card. Togekiss VMAX is the last archetype we will look at, and I got very creative with this one because I do think it's, again, a card that lends itself to creativity. You can be disruptive with it. You can try to build up a lot of damage with powerful colorless energy, but Max Glide searches your deck for any 2 cards and puts them into your hand. So I think we're going to want to protect our hand with the new Milotic card that stops our hand from being affected by the supporter card Marnie, which will be seen in most decks across the format. Here is my creative and possibly wacky list for Togekiss VMAX, using the new Zoroark from Evolving Skies as well to change itself into other Stage 1 Pokemon like Flapple with the Acidus Mucus attack, Arctozolt, which makes your opponent damage themselves when they attach energy, Chinchino, which draws you cards, or that Milotic, like I mentioned, that saves you from being Marnied. So those are all the decks that we'll look at today, and thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out my sponsors, PotownStore.com and PokemonCard.io, and also subscribe to this channel for daily Pokemon TCG content if you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.